Tonight, market meltdown. U.S. stocks posting the biggest daily drop in almost 2 years. The Dow plunging nearly 1,200 points. The S&P and NASDAQ each slipping more than 4%. Earnings reports from major retailers, Target and Walmart, sending investors scrambling what the intensifying Wall Street sell-off could mean for your money, a possible recession, and that 401k. Also breaking tonight, President Biden invoking the Defense Production Act to try and ease a formula shortage. The crisis so severe, several children are now being hospitalized. How the White House plans to fill store shelves as soon as possible, plus the warning about online scams targeting desperate parents. Too close to call. Votes still being counted in the critical Republican Senate primary in Pennsylvania. Dr. Oz still locked in a neck-and-neck race with hedge fund manager David McCormick. Trump's endorsement not giving the celebrity doctor the easy win he was hoping for. Plus the results in other major primaries across the country and what they could signal for this year's midterms. Buried alive, an 18-year-old man killed, his 17-year-old sister injured after a hole they were digging on the beach collapsed. Rescuers using everything, including a backhoe, to try and dig them out. Million-dollar heist robbers smashing jewelry cases with hammers in a California store and taking off with tubs full of merchandise, employees grabbing anything, including chairs, to fight them off. And Happy Meal, how a clever 2-year-old ordered 31 cheeseburgers from McDonald's while his mother thought he was just playing with her phone. Top story starts right now. And good evening. More and more warning signs. Is America heading towards a recession? Fears growing amid a major market sell-off that doesn't appear to be slowing down. Stocks plunging across the board today. The Dow down more than 1,100 points. Its worst loss since June of 2020. The NASDAQ down nearly 5%. The S&P also having its worst day in nearly 2 years. The stock sell-off set in motion by several factors, including terrible earnings reports from major retailers such as Target and Walmart. And now Target losing a quarter of its value in a single day. And as gas prices continue to soar and inflation rates climb, many are asking if the market could be pointing towards a larger economic crisis. It's why we're starting right here tonight with what's happening to your money. And leading us off tonight is CNBC anchor Brian Sullivan. Brian, take us to Wall Street. What happened today and what's going on?
Well, there are very real fears, to your point, about a recession coming in the next few months or the next few quarters, maybe early next year, Tom. The market tries to predict what's going to happen, and it is not predicting good things for the American economy. To your point, the Dow falling nearly 1,200 points, the worst day in about 2 years, right at the depths of when the pandemic hit. You had the tech-heavy NASDAQ, all the big names you know, Apple, Microsoft, et cetera. You know the stocks. You don't have to own them, but you know the companies. They've been market leaders for years. Not today. They all got knocked. That index down about 5%. Very real concerns about both the American economy and the global economy going forward, Tom.
You know, Brian, on this broadcast, I always remind viewers the stock market is not the economy. But as you just mentioned there, it tends to predict the future, right? Traders want to be one step ahead. The algorithms that do this trading look for patterns. What is the market telling us?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I know it's confusing. Listen, there's so many people watching you right now saying, wait a minute, the restaurants are full, the hotels are full, my flight last week was full. Things look like they're going well, and they are right now. The consumer is strong right now. But to your point, markets look out about 9 to 12 months. They try to predict, guess, and sometimes, by the way, they are spectacularly wrong, what's going to happen. And what they see is inflation, higher prices for everything, ultimately taking a toll on the consumer, and that's exactly what you're talking about with Walmart and Target.
Yeah, so the thinking, are we close to the bottom or we haven't seen the bottom yet?
Wow, that's a tough question. If I knew that, I'd probably be doing something else than be sitting here. I will say this, though, Tom. The stock market looks to what they call washout or capitulation days, basically where everybody just kind of gives up, sells everything. Today felt a little bit like that. Only 8 stocks in the S&P 500 rose. Just 8. Measures of fear, up. Breadth, meaning how many volumes of shares was traded, way up on the downside. I'm not going to say today was the bottom, but today was certainly feeling like a washout day.
So I know you're not a personal wealth advisor. I know you're a very smart guy. What are the CNBC experts saying about if you're close to retirement and you're looking at your 401k tomorrow and it's taken a 10 to 15% hit? What's the advice right now?
All right. Well, I appreciate all those things. And you're right. I am not I will give some advice, though, Tom. Don't look. I mean, right now, you get it in the mail. You get the email saying open to see your quarterly numbers. I would just say, doing this 25 years, don't look, because it probably is going to be painful unless you are in just certain stocks like oil and gas, which are really the only ones that have done well this year. I want to leave you with some optimism. The stock market goes up 75 to 77% of the times. We have had major disasters. I mean, think about 2020, which you just referenced, where the S&P fell 30% in a matter of months before more than doubling off that bottom. We will have declines. They are painful, but they are natural and they are healthy. Even recessions, as painful as they are, can sometimes be a reset for certain things. I would just say, look ahead. There will be better days. The sun will come up tomorrow. The market may not go up tomorrow, Tom, but the sun will come up.
All right, we hope so. Brian Sullivan leading us off with that breaking news. Brian, we thank you. Tonight, the other major headline we're tracking here on Top Story, President Biden just invoking the Defense Production Act to address a growing baby formula crisis. The shortage so severe, some children have been sent to the hospital and some parents are falling victim to online scams. NBC's Kate Snow has more.
Invoking the Defense Production Act allows the president to direct private companies to produce more baby formula.
We want to pursue every avenue possible to get formula back on shelves for parents. That is our goal. You know, again, we come at this not just as public servants, but as parents and grandparents.
The baby formula shortage has gotten so severe, it's now leading to hospitalizations. 11-week-old Chloe is doing better today after gastrointestinal surgery on Monday. Born with allergies to dairy and soy, her parents couldn't find a special amino acid-based formula she needed.
Nowhere in stores. We looked everywhere, even places that said they would have it, like a CVS that was 45 minutes from our house. We called them, we went there, you know.
3 weeks ago, mom Savannah Wheatley posted a desperate plea on Facebook.
You wrote plea for formula. I'm trying to keep Chloe out of the hospital. We're desperate.
Yeah. We had tried everything for her. Sorry. We need to have her on the most hypoallergenic formula to see like if this will indeed help her to keep us out of the hospital.
Their dietitian at Medical University of South Carolina Children's Health says Chloe is one of at least 4 babies here, in part because of the formula shortage.
There was a family who tried to make homemade baby formula and did have to go to the pediatric ICU due to having some, that formula providing not enough of what a baby needed.
Google searches in the U.S. for homemade baby formula are up 250% over the last week. Recipes are circulating on YouTube.
We do not recommend that parents make their own formula.
It's not just in South Carolina.
This is a crisis for us in healthcare.
At Le Bonheur Children's Hospital in Tennessee, a preschooler and toddler with special dietary needs were hospitalized after their parents couldn't find the formula they normally take.
You had several weeks of stock. We're now out for the special formulas.
The House tonight expected to vote on a bill that would allow families receiving government support, called WIC, the flexibility to buy any brand of formula. By one estimate, up to 68% of all infant formula sold in the U.S. is purchased through WIC. But there's still confusion and stores with no supply. The White House sharply criticized today by members of its own party.
I give everybody an F on the entire spectrum of this, from the company itself, to the FDA oversight, to the interagencies who didn't talk to each other, to the entire problem. Nobody focused on this like they needed to.
People should also know is that from the president on down, everyone is laser focused on addressing this issue and pulling every lever possible to do so. That's why we are working now to import formula from abroad, to get manufacturers to increase production here, to get the plant that was actually shut down back online quickly.
All right, Kate Snow joins us now live. Kate, you know, we're both parents, but I don't think you have to be a parent to feel for that mother there. I mean, that emotion is so raw, and to hear this it's sad, it's upsetting, and it's alarming. Can you explain to our viewers what exactly the Biden administration is starting to do tonight?
Yeah, and she's not even sure what they're going to do when they leave the hospital, Tom. But what the Biden administration is saying is they're basically telling factories out there, make baby formula ahead of everything else. Prioritize that. Don't make other products and get that baby formula out there. They're also working on basically using military aircraft to try to rush formula in from overseas to try to fill shelves that way as well. And Tom, I want to tell you about one other piece of breaking news. We found out late today that the Senate is now investigating the company Abbott, which is the company that had that factory shut down in the first place after there were problems there. They're investigating them. They're today sending a letter asking for information about their tax practices, about conditions at the plant before it closed, and about $8 billion in stock buybacks that the company has authorized since 2019. And by the way, tomorrow, the FDA is going to be in the hot seat on Capitol Hill, Tom.
Yeah, and Kate, we saw there in your report for parents to stay away from those recipes that are online on YouTube to try to make your own baby formula. But we're also learning about scams out there as well.
Yeah, so people are taking advantage of this situation, right? And they're trying to sell people formula that's not really formula. So we have some tips for you from the Better Business Bureau. Number one, positive reviews on the website that have been copied from honest sites or created by scammers can be a real red flag. Watch out for that. Also, if there's no indication of a brick and mortar address, right? If you don't know that it's linked to an actual store. Also look for misspellings online, grammatical errors, or other descriptive language that is inconsistent with the product. Just some tips to kind of avoid being scammed.
It is so wild that mothers have to be dealing with this right now. Okay, Kate, thanks for all that reporting. We appreciate it. All right, we turn now to politics and a Senate primary contest that's too close to call. Votes still being tallied for the top Republican candidates as observers watch to see if the Trump-backed candidate can pull off a win. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker has more.
Tonight, the Trump effect on full display in battleground Pennsylvania, where they're still counting votes in the Republican Senate primary. Trump-backed celebrity doctor Mehmet Oz has a razor-thin lead over former hedge fund manager David McCormick, who also embraced the MAGA movement. The race is still too close to call. Dr. Oz lavishing praise on Mr. Trump overnight.
God bless you, sir, for putting so much effort into this race. I will make you proud.
A late surge by conservative commentator Kathy Barnett, another Trump supporter who attended the January 6th Stop the Steal rally, coming up short. The winner of the race will face off against the Democratic nominee, progressive Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, who's recovering from a stroke. Late today, Mr. Trump saying on social media, Dr. Oz should declare victory. It makes it much harder for them to cheat with the ballots that they just happened to find. Trump offering no evidence to back that up. The former president falsely declared victory on election night in 2020, a race he ultimately lost.
Frankly, we did win this election.
Overall, it was a mixed night for Mr. Trump, and candidates who he endorsed who also supported his so-called Stop the Steal efforts. Some were victorious, like State Senator Doug Mastriano, who won the GOP nod for governor in Pennsylvania, and North Carolina Congressman Ted Budd, who beat out former Governor Pat McCrory for the GOP Senate nomination.
And friends, I want to thank President Donald J. Trump.
Budd was among the House members who voted against certifying the 2020 election. But in Idaho, Republican Governor Brad Little beat out Trump-backed Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin, who claimed Trump won the 2020 election and has called for audits of every state's voter rolls. And the former president's endorsement wasn't enough to secure a victory for pro-Trump firebrand Congressman Madison Cawthorn, who lost after being besieged by scandals.
All right, Kristen Welker joins us now live from the White House. Kristen, let's go back to Pennsylvania for a moment here. Walk us through the next steps as far as the Republican primary is concerned.
Well, Tom, the race for GOP Senate is so narrow. They're still counting the votes, as we said. There will likely be a recount. Why? Well, because under Pennsylvania law, a recount is triggered when the margin for a race is less than or equal to 0.5%. So that means we likely won't know the results of this race for days, if not longer. Now, given the high stakes, it wouldn't be a surprise if there's more contentious statements from former President Trump and the candidates themselves, Tom.
All right, let's turn to the Democratic side now. You mentioned there the Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman coming out on top. He's called himself, quote, a dude in shorts. What are his chances come November? And a reminder to our viewers, this is a race to replace Republican Senator Pat Toomey, who's retiring.
That's right. Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman doesn't dress like a typical politician. He often wears hoodies. But look, he's aligned himself with the progressive side of the Democratic Party. He endorsed Bernie Sanders back in 2016. He supports progressive priorities. But we're already seeing him moderate his tone a bit, Tom. It's really interesting. When asked if he's a progressive recently, Fetterman said, "I'm just a Democrat." You can expect an all hands on deck response from Democrats. President Biden has already come out, expressed his support for Fetterman. That is because Pennsylvania is critical. It's a state that could determine the balance of power in the Senate. Tom.
All right, Kristen Welker with a lot of reporting there. Kristen, we thank you for that. We want to head overseas now. Russia says nearly 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers have surrendered at that steel plant in Mariupol that we've been telling you about for weeks as fighting rages in the country's east. And tonight, the first Russian soldier tried for war crimes in Ukraine pleaded guilty. Richard Engel is there, and a warning, some of the images you're about to see are very disturbing.
Ukrainian rescue crews today saved a 9-year-old boy after a Russian strike on an apartment building in the eastern region known as the Donbass. Russia is now concentrating its military efforts there after taking over Mariupol this week. But elsewhere, Russia's war is faltering again. Today, the U.S. reopened its embassy in Kyiv, where Ukrainian troops drove Russian forces back 2 months ago. Now, Ukraine is pushing the Russians back from the eastern capital, Kharkiv. In the nearby village of Olhovka, all that's left of the Russian troops is the devastation they brought. Shockingly, some Ukrainians stayed here throughout the battles, including Nikolai, living in the wreck of his home, having survived on canned food and pickles. What happened here? The Russians came and said they were liberating us, he says. Next door, Tatiana, a teacher, stayed, but not her husband. He took up the Russians' offer to go to Russia to escape the shelling. Tatiana chose her country over her husband, and she's unsure if she'll ever see him again.
Do you think you made the right choice?
I love my husband, but I also love my land and my country, so I stayed. And now investigators have a whole new region to search for evidence of Russian war crimes.
Tom, today the first Russian soldier put on trial here for a war crime pleaded guilty to killing a Ukrainian civilian outside of Kyiv, and he faces up to life imprisonment. Tom?
Richard Engel again for us from Ukraine tonight. Richard, thank you. We want to turn now to the latest on a story we first told you about last night. The Wall Street Journal reporting that data from a plane that crashed in China in March, killing 132 people, suggests someone in the cockpit intentionally downed the plane. We're joined tonight by one of the reporters that broke this story, Andrew Tangle. Andrew, thanks for joining Top Story. You know, one of the unique things about what happened here was that there was video of this nosedive, and that video was so chilling. And I remember talking to Tom Costello, our correspondent who covers aviation, about this, and he was saying they've never seen anything like it. It sounds like your reporting suggests what a lot of people thought, that someone in that cockpit put the plane in that position.
It's very difficult to get a plane to do that. And the initial readout of the aircraft's flight data recorder suggests that the plane did what someone in that cockpit told it to do. Who or why is still murky. There are a lot of unanswered questions.
And I think one of the major developments that's happened since you broke this story with the Wall Street Journal yesterday was that we've seen all the video of the cleanup over the months that this had happened. But, rarely does China sort of ever let anything out that is negative towards the country and definitely not towards the government. But they're not pushing back on this story yet, correct?
We tried to get comment from the Civil Aviation Authority of China. We faxed requests for comment, as is the protocol, made multiple calls, and got nothing in return. They have said that they will provide updates in a timely fashion, and they've got many months. These investigations can take a year or more, and they're in control and will make some sort of determination at some point and make it public when they want to.
To be clear, has anyone ruled out a cockpit intruder?
Not according to the preliminary assessment by U.S. officials. Now, the Americans may not have all of the information that the Chinese authorities who are running the investigation have. It's not clear what is on the other black box, the cockpit voice recorder, and it's still an open question and a possibility that is still under consideration.
So do you have any kind of sense of, for the investigation purposes, what looks like, what they do essentially in China to look into the background of the pilots who were in the cockpit of the China Eastern jet?
That I do not know the answer to. It's a big question surrounding this. The actions of the flight crew in any investigation would come under scrutiny, as would their backgrounds. Now, the airline, China Eastern, reiterated a statement to us saying that the mental and physical and financial backgrounds of the pilots on this aircraft were good and in order, but it's unclear what else there is to know about the flight crew or what precipitated this terrible tragedy.
Okay, we thank you for that. Back here at home to an NBC News investigation. New questions tonight surrounding Hunter Biden's finances as investigators look into allegations he may have broken federal tax law. Newly released documents show payments his company received when his father was vice president and spending habits of more than $200,000. Hallie Jackson has more.
The president's son under growing scrutiny tonight over his finances, with federal prosecutors in Delaware investigating Hunter Biden and whether he broke federal tax law. Now, a representative for Mr. Biden tells NBC News his bill from the IRS, about $2 million, has been paid off. Two people familiar with the matter say the money was arranged by one of the younger Biden's new attorneys, Hollywood lawyer Kevin Morris, best known for brokering a deal for the South Park TV show.
Does paying that tax bill wash away any liability that Hunter Biden may have now?
Paying the tax bill, if in fact that's what he did, doesn't undo the crime. It would be like returning money to a bank that you robbed. You still robbed the bank.
The president's son and his company brought in about $11 million between 2013 and 2018, including some years in which his father was vice president, working as an attorney, a board member to a Ukrainian gas company accused of bribing a prosecutor, and for a joint venture involving a Chinese businessman now accused of fraud, according to an NBC News analysis of a copy of Biden's hard drive and iCloud account, as well as documents released by a Senate committee. During the campaign, then-candidate Joe Biden denied his son profited off a China connection.
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China.
The records show Hunter Biden's company received nearly $5 million in consulting contracts from that joint venture funded by a Chinese energy company. A snapshot of Hunter Biden's spending shows that for about 5 months in late 2017 and early 2018, he spent more than $200,000 a month on things like luxury hotel rooms, cash withdrawals, dental work, and payments on a Porsche, according to documents on the hard drive, a time period in which Hunter Biden has acknowledged struggling with drug addiction.
The immediate focus appears to be for both the president and Hunter Biden is whether or not there'll be any charges as a result of this federal criminal investigation.
Hunter Biden's laptop, a subject of controversy after documents recovered from it were brought to light by the Biden's political opponents, with some cybersecurity experts at one point in 2020 suggesting it bore hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign. Since then, several news organizations have authenticated many emails from the laptop, and NBC News obtained a copy of the hard drive from a representative for Rudy Giuliani. The president has defended his son.
Are you confident that Hunter did nothing wrong?
I'm confident.
And Hunter Biden has denied any illegal business dealings.
I'm cooperating completely, and I am absolutely certain, 100% certain, that at the end of the investigation, that I will be cleared of any wrongdoing.
Experts point out family members of a president who hold no official job in the administration are not bound by any government ethics rules.
Hunter Biden seems a lot like somebody whose primary profession is being Joe Biden's son. But unless there's a direct connection to Joe Biden, that's really more of a criticism of one private citizen rather than a government official or an administration.
Hunter Biden's attorney did not comment on the record, and the White House has not responded to our request for comment. Tom?
Hallie Jackson, thank you. Now to the rising COVID cases across the U.S. and alarming news from TV host Jimmy Kimmel. The comedian announced that he tested positive for COVID again 2 weeks after saying he got COVID from his daughter. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar joins us now. Dr. Azar, a lot of people out there who just contracted COVID may think they have those antibodies. I know you haven't examined Jimmy Kimmel, but what do you think happened here?
So we really don't have a lot of information on this, Tom, and probably the most important thing was, do we actually know if he got reinfected with a different strain of the virus, or is it more likely that he just didn't really clear the initial infection and then somehow sort of had a relapse of some of his symptoms? So without knowing if he had PCRs, if he did rapids, and what the actual strain was, I really can't comment on that too much, other than to say we know that reinfection is common. It's very unusual to get reinfected that soon after you've recovered, because you do have antibodies that will confer some protection for some period of time, but we don't know how long.
But we are seeing people who contracted COVID in January and are getting it again in this wave. That is happening a lot.
That is definitely happening, and we actually do now know that if you had infection with the original Omicron over the winter, you're actually not that well protected from the new BA2 or the BA2.121.
Why is that?
You know, this is what's frustrating us, because they are sublineages from the original Omicron, and so you would think that they would share enough genetics.
They'd be related. They're cousins.
They'd be cousins. They'd be related, not like a complete, through marriage, right, relationship the way we saw with Delta. But suffice it to say, they're different enough that they can sort of trick the immune system or shock the immune system, and you can get reinfected.
We're kind of a tricky spot, right? The country, I think it's fair to say, has COVID fatigue. A lot of people have moved on beyond the masks. The CDC is raising the alarm again about hot spots all over the country.
Yeah.
What can we do? And I'll just say from personal experience, I went to an event the other night where they recommended people wear masks. I think they asked people to wear masks.
Yeah.
Nobody was wearing the mask.
Nobody was wearing one.
And they didn't enforce it either, because I obviously don't think they wanted an incident.
Right.
So what's going to happen?
So what's happening right now is that we are seeing a little bit of a dangerous convergence of these new strains that are increasing with each sequential strain. It is more contagious. And at the same time, we're seeing immunity waning from all of our vaccines and our boosters, and we're seeing mask guidelines and everything being relaxed. That is the making of a perfect storm. And we're seeing that, right? Because we're seeing the case numbers rising. We're seeing a commensurate, not quite a comparable, but a commensurate rise in hospitalizations. But there is a silver lining here, Tom. And that is that although we are seeing an increase in deaths, because that automatically is going to follow, there is a lag, meaning that the deaths aren't coming as close to the hospitalizations as they were in previous waves. The deaths are coming a little bit later. What does that tell us? That tells us that the vaccines and the boosters are keeping people out of the hospital, less sick, less likely to end up in the ICU, and our therapeutics are helping. Paxlovid, remdesivir, monoclonals, they're saving people's lives. So sadly, again, because the numbers are so high, we saw this already. The numbers are so high, we're going to see people dying, but we're not seeing them dying at the same rate as we're seeing the cases increase. And that uncoupling is definitely reassuring if you want to find a silver lining in all of that.
Dr. Natalie Azar for us. Dr. Azar, we thank you. Still ahead tonight, court bombshells in Johnny Depp's defamation case against Amber Heard. The graphic testimony from Heard's family and friends, including a makeup artist who said she covered up Heard's bruises. Plus, vacation tragedy, sand collapsing on two teens, killing one of them. The warning for parents ahead of a busy summer travel season. And robbers making off with $1 million worth of jewelry, but not without a fight. How employees tried to stop them. Stay with us. We're back now with more on the high-profile defamation case between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Heard's sister taking a stand today along with several friends and acquaintances of Heard. They say they saw her injuries but did not witness the physical abuse. NBC's Steve Patterson has been following that for us.
Tonight, Amber Heard's contentious time on the stand, followed by fresh bombshells from friends and family.
He called her a used-up trash bag, slimy, saggy, was thrown out a bunch.
Heard's younger sister, Whitney Henriquez, giving graphic testimony saying Depp was constantly high, drunk, and violent, including one incident where she says he hit her.
He comes up behind me, strikes me in the back, kind of just somewhere over here. He strikes me in the back. I hear Amber shout, "Don't hit my sister." She smacks him, lands one.
Depp previously denied striking Henriquez. Heard admitted to hitting Depp as a way to defend her sister. Henriquez testifying along with a procession of witnesses called by Heard's lawyers to paint Depp as a paranoid abuser who would often launch into blind rages.
He ran into the unit and it scared the shit out of me because he was wasted and screaming.
I was worried for her physical safety. I was worried that when he turned, he might accidentally do something that was worse than he ever intended.
Heard's former friend Raquel Pennington, who took several pictures of Heard following alleged abuse, getting emotional in pre-recorded testimony while describing injuries she saw on Heard's face and body.
Does this picture fairly and accurately depict, at least in part, Miss Heard's appearance on that night in December 15, 2015?
Yeah. Yes.
Also today, Heard's makeup artist testifying she concealed bruises.
We covered, the discoloration, the bruises with a little slightly heavier concealer.
It's the latest chapter in the $50 million defamation suit brought by Johnny Depp after a 2018 op-ed published in the Washington Post where Heard described herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse. Heard countersuing for $100 million. Earlier in the trial, Depp's legal team called witnesses they believed would poke holes in the claims made by Heard.
Are you able to testify whether Amber Heard was the victim of domestic violence by Mr. Depp on May 21, 2016?
Based on our investigation, it appeared as if she was not.
So far, no one has testified they saw Depp hit Heard, but today, Heard's attorneys highlighting specific incidents where witnesses testified they had to intervene in fights.
She was calling for help, and that had never happened before, saying, help me. I went up to him and he was yelling and yelling, and I put my hands up on his chest and I was like, stop, just stop.
All right, Steve Patterson joins us now from Los Angeles again tonight. Steve, some explosive testimony there we just heard. I understand Depp himself may be called as a witness for the defense in the coming days?
Yeah, Tom, Depp is listed as a potential witness. Now, we don't know for sure if he will be called, but it is expected that we will hear from some of Depp's associates tomorrow, including his former attorney, Adam Waldman. Heard claims Waldman defamed her, speaking as a representative of Depp, and is the reason for the $100 million counterclaim. Closing arguments set to wrap up on May 27th. Tom?
Okay, Steve, we thank you for that. We want to turn now to a heartbreaking story out of New Jersey. You may have seen this headline. An 18-year-old died after a hole he was digging on the beach collapsed. It comes 3 days after a similar death in Utah. And this kind of incident is actually more common than you might think. Priscilla Thompson reports.
I need help. Tonight, tragedy on the Jersey Shore. We're digging a hole at the beach and it caved in on the kids. A young man has died, police say, after a 10-foot deep hole he and his sister were digging with frisbees on the beach collapsed on the pair. We can see one because we have no visibility on the second one. The 17-year-old sister was rescued and treated at the scene, according to officials, but rescuers were unable to reach her brother, Levy Caverly, in time.
It looked like he was still in the digging process, and that moment happened with that collapse of the sand within seconds, getting covered up very quickly.
Witnesses now describing the urgent rescue effort as aerial videos show crews using boards, buckets, and even a backhoe to dig them out.
The last thing I did see, sadly, was they brought a bodyboard into the hole. After I saw the bodyboard go into the hole, I decided to walk away.
Once that collapses in on you, it's tons of weight.
The victim's father remembering his 18-year-old son on social media, describing him as a tech nut who knew Jesus Christ and was not real concerned with what others thought. Levy and his family were visiting Toms River from Maine when the tragic accident unfolded Tuesday afternoon, police say. This type of accident not unheard of, according to locals, especially with no lifeguards on duty until Memorial Day.
We've heard some stories in the past about people tragically dying in these holes, and it's really sad.
Just this weekend, a 13-year-old boy died in Utah after a tunnel he'd been digging in a sand dune caved in on him, authorities there say.
It's tempting to assume this is what people used to call a freak accident, but the fact of the matter is that there are a number of cases every year and have been that way for at least 25 years, and this is a preventable problem.
Dr. Bradley Marin has tracked sand hole collapses for more than a decade. What are the rules when it comes to safety and digging sand holes?
So our guidelines and recommendations has always been not to dig holes. If you do, certainly don't do it deeper than the knee depth of the smallest person in your party.
Words of caution ahead of summer vacations in the hopes of preventing another tragedy like this one.
All right, Priscilla joins us now live here on Top Story. Priscilla, I got to be honest, I'm surprised at how common this is, as you point out in your story. Yeah. What is the chance for survival here?
Unfortunately, about 60% of these collapses are fatal, and experts say part of the issue is how long it can take rescuers to get that person out. You saw in the video first responders using that heavy machinery, but even that can pose a risk to the person who is trapped. And so in the time that rescue effort is happening, that sand is compressing on that person's chest, experts tell me, and may also be obstructing their airway.
And as a rule of thumb, you should only dig how deep?
Only dig to the knees of the smallest person in your party, but ideally you don't want to be digging holes in the sand.
Yeah, okay, Priscilla, we thank you for that. Okay, straight ahead, in the nick of time, a driver making a wrong turn onto railroad tracks. Take a look at this right before a train comes. Her escape happening just in time. Stay with us. All right, we are back now with Top Story's news feed, and one of the former officers charged in the death of George Floyd has pleaded guilty to manslaughter. Thomas Lane was at the scene when Floyd was killed in May 2020. Part of his plea deal included dismissing a charge of aiding and abetting second-degree murder. Lane has already been convicted in a federal trial of violating Floyd's civil rights. Next to the shocking security camera video from a Southern California jewelry store, you have to see this. New surveillance video shows robbers rushing into a shop in El Monte, smashing jewelry cases with hammers and grabbing what they could. Workers fighting back, throwing chairs, a trash can, and other items. The fight even spilling out into the sidewalk. The owners say, get this, the thieves made off with about $1 million worth of jewelry. So far, no arrests have been made. Martin Shkreli, the so-called pharma bro, you may remember him, has been released from prison early. He posted this selfie after getting out. Shkreli served part of a 7-year sentence after being convicted of securities fraud. His attorney says he's been sent to a halfway house in New York. The former pharmaceutical investor is known for raising the price of a rare life-saving drug by 5,000%. And a woman is lucky to be alive after her car became stuck on the train tracks in Georgia. Again, she's okay, but take a look at this. New video shows a woman drive onto the tracks at a railroad crossing in Duluth. You can see her get out of her vehicle and out of the way just in time before that train smashes into her car. The woman says she's not familiar with the area. She just made a wrong turn. All right, we want to turn to the Americas now. Tonight we head to Texas, where crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border are reaching historic heights. We told you about this last night. The Department of Homeland Security officials visiting the border this week, insisting they are prepared to lift Title 42 come next week. So what happens then? NBC's Morgan Chesky is at the border tonight.
Tonight on the U.S.-Mexico border, one surge. Getting in position and preparing for another. The Rio Grande near Eagle Pass, flanked by National Guardsmen, Texas State Troopers, and across the river, Mexican State Police, all working to back up U.S. Border Patrol, stretched thin by record migrant crossings, more than 200,000 encounters in April alone. Many shedding their wet clothing immediately before facing a different journey. Authorities say these stretches of razor wire put in just the last few weeks are supposed to direct or funnel migrants as they come across the river to where they can be safely taken into custody by Border Patrol agents or other law enforcement.
We want to protect everyone, but we want for them to come over here to the United States legally.
DPS Sergeant Juan Maldonado says the danger for migrants is constant, from human trafficking to the 25 drownings that have taken place during crossings in just the last month.
And right in front of people, you know, they think it's safe to cross, but they don't see the undercurrent, and that's very dangerous.
Has DPS or Border Patrol ever faced a potential immigration challenge like the one you're anticipating.
I don't believe we have in a long time, sir.
To the south in the Rio Grande Valley,
this is without by far the busiest zone.
The Department of Homeland Security stressing coming days could bring historic levels of migration.
Right now we've had 68 large groups of over 100.
The department secretary Alejandro Mayorkas toured border facilities on Tuesday. The visit just days before a federal judge is expected to rule if the Biden administration can end Title 42.
Based on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's decision that it will end on May 23rd, that does not mean that the border is open beginning on May 23rd.
The end of pandemic-era policy put in place by the Trump administration that blocked migrants from claiming asylum in the United States.
We are surging resources to the southwest border.
Meanwhile, the border's immediate future lies in Louisiana, where a federal judge is expected to rule on a lawsuit filed by more than 20 Republican-led states, fighting to keep Title 42 in place.
Okay, Morgan Chesky joins us now live from Eagle Pass there in Texas, right next to the border. Morgan, I want to ask you about where you finished off there. Do we have any indication when the federal judge might make a decision on whether the Biden administration can lift Title 42?
Yeah, Tom, we don't have any indication, nor do we know exactly which way he's leaning. We were in Lafayette, Louisiana last week when both sides presented their arguments. The judge who was appointed by President Trump not really giving any idea on which way he's leaning, but he did make a promise, and that was to make a decision by May 23rd, and that is when Title 42 is set to officially expire. Tom.
All right, we're going to have to wait and see. Morgan Chesky reporting from the border tonight. Morgan, thank you. Now to Top Stories Global Watch and collision on the Australian campaign trail. It's dangerous out there. Prime Minister Scott Morrison was playing in a soccer game. Oh, no, when he ran into a child, basically tackling the poor little kid. Morrison rolled over, checking for injuries. They were both okay, luckily, and exchanged a friendly high five. Election day there is on Saturday. Don't tackle children, guys. All right. And Forbes releasing its list of the highest paid athletes in the world. Topping that list is PSG forward Lionel Messi. The soccer superstar reportedly made $130 million in the last year. LeBron James came in at number 2 with more than $121 million, I should say. A note, the Lakers player making most of his money off the court, though. Manchester United Cristiano Ronaldo is the third on the list, ranking in $115 million, according to Forbes. Number 4, yet another soccer player, Neymar. He made about $95 million. Steph Curry rounds out the top 5 with more than $92 million. The totals include both their sports salary and money made through other deals. Okay, and speaking of athletes' pay, today the Men and Women's National Players Union reaching a landmark agreement with U.S. Soccer after a long legal battle. Players for the women's national soccer team will finally be paid the same as the men. Here's NBC's Stephanie Gosk.
Equal pay for making the team, for games and events, and for playing in the World Cup, which, by the way, the U.S. women's soccer team has won 4 times.
To be able to say finally equal pay for equal work feels very, very good.
The Men and Women National Soccer Players Unions and U.S. Soccer announced the new historic bargaining agreement today. It is a victory years in the making, led by some of the sport's biggest stars. A federal wage complaint was filed back in 2016.
The pay disparity between the men and women is just too large.
28 players filed a lawsuit in 2019 against U.S. Soccer. 2 years later, Megan Rapinoe appeared in front of Congress.
We're still paid less than our male counterparts. For each trophy, of which there are many, for each win, for each tie, for each time we play, less.
Earlier this year, a settlement was reached in the lawsuit that included $22 million in back pay. And now with this new agreement, U.S. Soccer will do something no other soccer federation in any country does. World Cup prize money will be pooled and split between the men and women's teams.
But we also believe so much in the women's team. We believe in the whole premise of equal pay.
The men's team was a big part of final negotiations.
It does mean that the men are giving up a little bit of money, though, potentially, right?
Not potentially, for sure. And I think we need to give the men a lot of credit.
After years of frustration and pounding the table, now this playing field has been leveled. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
All right, when we come back, how doctors are helping children in Ukraine from thousands of miles away. This is an incredible story. Stay with us. All right, we are back now with a Top Story original. In Ukraine, hundreds of children have died in this war. Even more have been wounded. Tonight, I look at how some doctors are trying to save lives, helping care for the injured in Kharkiv without ever stepping foot in the hospital. NBC's Matt Bradley has this story.
For a girl who's endured multiple surgeries, Kira is in remarkably good spirits.
You're smiling. You seem happy. Why are you've been through a whole lot.
I'm smiling and I'm in a good mood because this could happen to anybody. Now I've been here 1 month, I realize I can't postpone things. I can't wait. It's now a new phase of my life.
On April 15th, a Russian artillery shell lodged a piece of shrapnel into Kira's spine. She's one of more than 400 Ukrainian children who have been wounded since the fighting began nearly 3 months ago.
What are you going to do with this? Are you going to keep this?
I'll keep it with me, and every year on April 15th, and I'll take it out, and it'll be like a second birthday.
Because you feel like a new person now. Is that right?
Yes, I'm alive, and it's a miracle.
In a way, Kira's lucky. One of the boys she was with was killed in the same artillery attack that maimed her. Many of Kharkiv's wounded children go to see Dr. Pavlo Gubinov.
What's it like to see a child suffering like that?
Impossible to get used to it. It's terrible.
The first hospital where Dr. Gubinov worked was shelled early in the fighting. He had to bring his child patients here. Now his hospital hopes to benefit from some American expertise.
What about remote technology? Do you cooperate with doctors who are living elsewhere?
We can communicate with our American colleagues.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine.
So she's got a really positive prognosis here, right?
I think she's going to do quite well. I mean, particularly with this kid's spirit. You can tell she's a fighter and, fearless, it seems.
Dr. Francis Duggan has been working to establish ways for doctors from all over the world to advise Ukrainian physicians in real time. He's starting telemedicine trials here to help patients like Kira.
Right now, Kharkiv Regional is our first hospital, but we're going to be doing telemedicine, teleradiology, and telesurgery. And what this will consist of is basically an ability for physicians and surgeons in the Ukraine to be able to consult with doctors in the United States.
Kira looks set to make a full recovery. But as this war drags on, patients like her could soon get help from doctors around the world.
I didn't walk for 1 month, and I'm planning to walk from tomorrow.
I bet you will.
Of course, I believe in myself.
I believe in you too.
Oh, thank you.
So, Tom, Kira's story is ultimately a happy one, but I got to tell you, it's not always the case for so many children in this country. 1,700, at least, educational institutions have been bombed by the Russians since the fighting began, and well more than 200 children have died. And that's, there are also all sorts of other consequences. So many children are out of school, and so many of them have been displaced so far in this fighting. It's children that really are carrying the burden here. Tom?
They really are carrying that burden. All right, Matt Bradley for us tonight from Ukraine. Matt, we appreciate that report, and we will be right back. Finally tonight, we've all ordered food using our phones, but not quite like this. A toddler's Texas-sized food delivery order surprising his mom and now going viral.
Hello. Hello. It's for you.
Texas mom Kelsey Golden was working from home with her 2-year-old son Barrett when she got a confusing message from DoorDash on her phone.
When they asked me, hey, your order is going to be a little bit longer because it's quite a big order.
Kelsey had used the app to order lunch for her 2 older kids in the past, but she didn't remember placing an order earlier that day.
I heard a door knock and I came out, and it turns out they were at our house, and she was like, sure, 31 burgers? I was like, oh, wow, no, I didn't order these.
That DoorDash delivery?
15, 16.
A supersized order of cheeseburgers from McDonald's.
31.
Kelsey didn't have to look far to find out who placed that order.
Is that worth the... You gonna eat all 31?
Sharing this image of Barrett on Facebook with the caption, apparently my 2-year-old knows how to order DoorDash.
You gonna share? You gonna ask if anybody wants some? I thought I locked the phone, but apparently I didn't, because then DoorDash came with 31 cheeseburgers. So
the family says 2-year-old Barrett will not be put in timeout.
I don't even think he realizes he did it. He just does this with the phones.
Mom describing it as a happy accident, leading to one unforgettable Happy Meal.
What do you think about all this, kiddo? You gonna eat all this?
And in case you're wondering about all those cheeseburgers, the family tells our NBC station KRIS they were able to share the cheeseburgers with others in the community, so that little guy didn't have to eat them all. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.